Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks. An update 110, which was launched last week, brought a whole host of changes, including those equipment changes which I covered in my video on Friday, but also it buffed a lot of tier 10 heavy tanks, the IS-4, the E-100, and also the T-110E5. In today's video, I'm going to be covering the changes to one of the original Soviet heavy tanks. Used to be at tier 9, then got moved up to tier 10. And it just received a lot of love. So firstly, I'm going to cover exactly what changes have happened to the IS-4, how this changes the ideology of the vehicle and its performance in battle, and follow it up with some Ace Tanker gameplay in just a second. So firstly, the IS-4. You're seeing the previous stats of the IS-4 on the left, and you're seeing the new stats of the IS-4 in update 110 on the right. So first up, it's had a tiny little bit of a damage per minute buff by 95.65 DPM or 0.22 rounds a minute rate of fire. It'll definitely help, but it's not as substantial as has happened on the T-110E5. Don't think that the IS-4 is the new damage per minute monster. That's really not the case. It's still a true super heavy tank, and it doesn't have the damage per minute to compete with other tier 10 tanks, especially mediums and tank destroyers. However, Wargaming have massively changed the gun handling on this vehicle. Check this out. 2.5 seconds aim time. Its dispersion values when moving have been buffed to 0.18. And also now when turning the turret at 0.06, it's arguable that you could maybe get away without using vertical stabilizers on this tank, especially considering the rate of fire and the newly buffed aim time. And now that there's better pieces of equipment probably to take, it's an option for you. However, I personally, in this video, I'm going to be using the vertical stabilizers just so we min-max that gun handling and see the new role of the IS-4. However, something has been nerfed. It's staring at you right in the middle of your screen, and that is the dispersion of this tank. That's the accuracy. It's been nerfed from 0.38 to 0.42 because Wargaming, I guess, didn't want it to turn into some kind of sniping tank. I guess their ideology of this vehicle is up front brawling, in the action, in the thick of it. That's where they want the IS-4 to be. And really, that's where the IS-4 was before. It's just, it didn't really have the statistics to allow it to do that significantly compared to a lot of other tier 10 vehicles. In addition to this, Wargaming have also buffed the turret traverse of this tank up to 25 degrees a second, the track traverse up to 30 degrees a second, which will allow it to be able to re-engage its enemies faster. And this means that the effective traverse speed of the vehicle is just significantly better across all terrains. Follow this up with a buff to the vehicle's hull armor, its frontal hull now going up to 155mm from 140mm that the IS-4 previously had. I can show you that exactly here. Here is the new IS-4 and here is the old IS-4. Let's imagine that the IS-4 is trying to penetrate itself with standard ammunition. How much harder is it for the IS-4 to be able to do that? Well, we can see that the color on that upper hull has changed from being about a 70% chance to penetrate it if you're shooting at it from an angle like this, now down to a 50 chance. So that's substantial. Also, this kind of weak point, where the driver's hatch here on the front is now 240mm thick, up from 210. So big buffs to the IS-4. And one thing that you don't see on Tanks GG, if you look at the raw statistics of this vehicle, is actually this plate that was 30mm thick on top of the turret is now 52mm thick. So that means that it can no longer be overmatched. Previously, all 91mm caliber guns could shoot the IS-4 in its forehead and it would always go through. Now you're going to need to have guns bigger than 156mm if you want to do that. So I guess that's only the FV215B183 and the Jagdpanzer E100 in the game. So now that you know how the IS-4 has been changed, well, it only paints half the story. Let's get stuck in on the battlefield. So here we go. We're rolling out against newly buffed heavy tanks with newly buffed heavy tanks. And also the enemy medium tank on the enemy team has been nerfed a little bit in the Object 430U. The 100, as I featured in my video last week, you've seen that if it chooses to use the 128mm caliber gun, it's got voracious damage per minute now. The IS-4 didn't receive that kind of a buff, but to be able to gain that turret, well, to lose the turret top weakness, to gain that upper hull strength, and more importantly, to gain the awesome traverse speed and the gun handling buff, that allows the IS-4 to compete in a different way than you would do in your T-110E5 or your E-100, which are practically there now if you choose to undergun the tank to be damage per minute monsters. Would I have hit that shot previously against the Patriot on the enemy team? Yeah, but probably not. That would have gone wayward with the dispersion values that the vehicle had. And that's it. That's really what you've got to notice. Of course, maybe it would have hit in last patch, but just look at this aim time. Look at the reactions that we can have with a vehicle like this. I'm not sure what I think about it in World of Tanks when I see the gun handling getting as good as this. You don't really need too much aim time. You don't really need too much accuracy. It doesn't look like the accuracy nerf really affecting us so far this game. Especially if you're trying to get the IS-4 into that sweet spot engagement for it, where you're fighting at the short and mid distances. You don't really want to be trying to snipe at enemy weak points at very long distances with a tank like this. I really don't think it's going to go too well. So we're able to get the tank round faster than ever and now be able to flank this Jagdpanther too, while also keeping an eye out to make sure the IS-4 that's behind us is not going to harass us as well. And whoa, that is a big load of tanks that are pushing over the bridge. Well, why don't we do what this tank is great for? And that is side scraping. Remember, this thing has 160 millimeters of side armor. And so if you side scrape like this, as well with the newly buffed upper hull, you're going to be better than ever at doing that. Because now I can kind of expose myself in this position and my upper hull is just so much stronger. As long as I angle it and I hide my inner plate, the weakness on this tank in this position will of course be the inner plate if they hit on here. But from this angle, just look at this thing. We don't have the turret weak point on top. Our upper hull is better than ever. And even if they decide to fire high explosive rounds at the top of the tank, okay, you can do 200 to me. It's a little bit annoying, but we are taking 440 chunks out of you consistently. So far we've blocked 1,100 damage. That was a bit of a poor shot by me there. I don't have much ammunition on this tank, and I especially don't have enough heat rounds really to deal with all of this thick German armor. And even though they've buffed the turret on the E100, as we're going to be seeing in just a second, how does the E100's newly buffed turret hold up to 340 millimeters of heat? Well, we'll find out that in just a second. In the meantime, this poor TS5, kind of looking a bit dejected there, puts his gun to the bottom, and do we manage to quite get their shot in there? No, not quite. Do I aim for the 430U? I can't quite catch the E100's turret with standard rounds, but if he exposes his hull like that, then even a standard round on this tank is going to be able to go in. Maybe he thought, he's firing heat, so I'll overexpose my tracks and use that spaced armor to be able to protect me. Well, no, luckily I did have an AP round loaded in there. Alright, so it's a duel, it's IS-4 versus IS-4, and right now, I kind of fluff it up a little bit. I lock down his tracks, but as I'm firing heat, that isn't going to be able to handle the enemy tank very well. And can you believe it? An E100 sounds like he fires around into the back of the IS-4, and he only manages to track him. And right now, this is an absolute disaster. The T-54E1 unable to damage the side of the IS-4. I'm trying to get as much damage as I possibly can in. And now I'm going to try and use the Object 430 to be able to block as much damage from the IS-4. And this is the brawling aspect of this tank now. Look at this thing. It's got the mobility that it needs. Now I'm going to do something a little bit funky and try and reverse side scrape against the TS5's gold round. He's getting some revenge on me from earlier. We're going to clutch one in against the top of his tank. And now the 430U's managed to run away. And this is the new IS-4. It has the mobility to brawl. It can dance like a, well, maybe not like a butterfly, but a slightly more nimble animal. Well, not more nimble than a butterfly. I'm pretty sure those things are quite nimble. It's just more mobile than it was before. You can dance around. You can get the thicker parts of your tank towards your opponent's line of fire, and more importantly, you can manage to keep up with them and engage their weak points. You can do little ramming maneuvers against the IS-4, as you saw there, to be able to keep him tracked, while also still firing your rounds into the more vulnerable parts of his tank. And we're up to 7,000 damage in the first 5 minutes of this battle, with 1,800 assistance damage as well. This is an absolute cracking round, and this has been a frenetic, fast-paced combat. And here you go, here's the E100 heat rounds that I promised you. So he bounces an armor-piercing round up at the top of my tank. Really, in this scenario, it doesn't matter if he fires heat or if he fires armor-piercing, he's not going to be able to go through the top of the tank. And we're using our last heat round to put round after round after round into the E100. And yeah, all the buff in the world to the top of the... Whoa, what's this? All the buff in the world to the E100 cheeks there, just insufficient for the 340 millimeters of penetration that the heat rounds on the IS-4 have. So 10,000 combined in less than 6 minutes. Sure, this was a very favourable situation for the IS-4. This was the biggest brawling part that you could get into on Erlenberg. It was also a very nice matchup. We didn't have to worry about too much artillery, and the tier 8 tanks decided to come at me rather than try and hide behind their tier 10s. Commiserations to this VK100-01P. Looks like he kind of, well, I think we scared him off the bridge there a little bit. They were trundling over that bridge, maybe expecting to come and crunch into the side. Did they expect the IS-4 to be able to do 4 or 5 tanks worth of damage in this game? Yeah, probably not. This vehicle, with its changes, is absolutely huge, and I have been enjoying playing my IS-4 more than ever. Has it suddenly leapfrogged all of the other heavy tanks in the game, now becoming the most dominant one at tier 10? No, I think that might be exaggerating if anyone was to claim that. However, with its buffs, this tank is more relevant than ever. And if you've had one gathering dust inside your garage over the last few years as other, better, heavy tanks with larger alpha damage and better armor and autoloaders have gone into the game, then maybe take it out onto the battlefield and give it another try. So an ace tanker here for the IS-4. We get a high caliber, unsurprisingly, for the 8,300 damage that we dealt, and with 1,800 damage upon detecting, that's going to be 10k combined in that cool sub 6 minute round. All in all, this vehicle, it's a powerhouse now in close quarters combat. It has the armor to be able to brush aside a lot of damage that other vehicles would wilt under, and it can handle the pressure. We were able to block 5,200 damage in this game. I think this is one that I would rather play inside the random queue, because quite a lot of tanks in random games don't fire heat rounds all the time. Quite a lot of the tier 8s and the tier 9s that you meet have got they've got substandard penetration, and they're not able to go through the side or the well-angled front of the IS-4. And that makes this thing very good inside the random queue. I definitely wouldn't take this one into ranked, however. I think if you get into ranked, people are going to start firing heat rounds against the hull armor, and then you're going to see just how well it does. And yeah, it's not particularly wonderful. In fact, this is actually the old model, but even if we were to fire heat rounds against the new model, yeah, probably not. Not unless you're using those 6 degrees of gun depression. So I think there are more competitive heavy tanks in the game, but now the IS-4 is by no means terrible. So that's it for today, ladies and gents. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, give it a thumbs up, but if you hated it, give it a thumbs down, and let me know if you have been enjoying the IS-4 in the 110 update like I have. And if you're watching this video as it's released on Sunday, it's time for the World of Tanks Tech Tree Showcase live right now on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby, and seeing how the Object 140 this Thursday is going to be top of the tree, or to the top, i.e. you can get a fat discount on it and you can get 5 times experience games all the way up the tech tree to be able to race towards it, then I think there's no better time to feature it during the Tech Tree Showcase. So come along right now as I play through one of the original medium tank lines inside the game, culminating with the very versatile and just high damage per minute medium tank that is the Object 140, which the rumor mill has it that they're currently testing on the super test that it might get 7 degrees of gun depression as well and improved upper hull armor. So maybe you do want to get your hands on it in case it's going to be buffed in the future, a lot like the IS-4 has been now. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing as many of you as possible right now on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby. And as always, thank you so much for watching.